Thanks. By the way, my very good friend Bogdan helped me translate all the slides to Polish, so I have no idea what any of this says. But you know, and he also helped me translate the book into Polish, and if you stay till the end of the presentation, you get a code to download the book for free. So, woohoo! In Polish, absolutely. I will give you the English version then. But with enough vodka, everybody can read Polish. That's not a problem, yeah. So I think, yeah, coupons, vodka, and then anyway. Lizard optimization is a way of discovering signals for product development you already have, but you're ignoring it. And it's one of these weird things where I think once I figured it out, it was completely insane. And then I started researching what other people are doing, and I found lots of people doing very, very similar things. Of course, there's no original ideas in the world. Lena did this talk before the lunch break that was really inspiring. She talked about how we need to learn from pain. We need to kind of give people very quick experience of value. You phrased it a bit better than I did. And you said, like, you know, when you're fighting, it needs to be the shortest distance possible. So those are kind of three things that are crucial for creating good products. And those are three things that are kind of really at the core of lizard optimization. So you've done my talk instead of me. I'll just try to kind of do it again. And there's a lovely, lovely story about using these three principles to develop good products from the most unlikely place you can imagine. It's a Chinese manufacturer of washing machines. So there's a book called The Startup Factory, which is totally amazing. You should read it. It was published last year, and it talks about Haier. Haier is a number 4 or number 5 biggest home appliance manufacturer in the world. Now, in Europe, they don't compete with that name. They own Candy, they own a bunch of other brands, but in 30 years' time, they changed from a single factory where, if the book is correct, somebody had to put up a sign that you're not allowed to shit and piss on the floor. That's how bad it was, to the point where they are now 4th or 5th biggest manufacturer of home appliances in the world. And they have so many good stories in the book that's insane. One story is how at some point they really got the quality of the washing machines to be really good. And they had almost no returns back. But then all of a sudden, for one specific type of washing machine, they started getting lots of service requests and lots of returns from one specific area of China. Now, you know, when we talk about one specific area of China, people think, you know, something like a city. No, there's like millions of people. And they needed to figure out what was going wrong with the washing machines. They tried to figure out whether they have a problem in transport because it was that specific area. No, you know, everything was arriving okay. They tried to figure out, are they servicing that area from some different factory? Because all the other areas are using the same machine, no problems at all, just this one area. No, there was no problem with that. And then they sent people to actually talk to service repair people and spend time with them to figure out what's going on when people bring the machines back. And at first, nobody wanted to admit anything. But then one person bringing the machine back said that they tried to wash potatoes in the machine. Apparently what had happened is one farmer somewhere, who knows how, doesn't matter, why, probably drunk, tried to wash potatoes in the washing machine and realized that this washing machine is not damaging the potatoes like all the other washing machines are. So the potatoes come out nice and clean. Plus they take on a bit of water, and because on the market you sell by weight, so they look nicer, you sell them for more money. And then he told his friend told his friends, his friend told his friends, and all of a sudden all the farmers in this part of China are buying this specific washing machine to wash potatoes. But because it's not intended for washing potatoes, when the potato peels off, it's clogging the components, the machines are dying, and they're sending them back for service. Now, when these guys figured that out, a month later there was a machine that was specifically aimed for washing potatoes on the market, selling like mad. And they created this whole concept of getting product managers to look at the pain, look at the unexpected stuff, look at unusual stuff. And in the guy who kind of took over the company 30 years ago called this thing zero distance to customer. That was one of their key principles. They're going to delete all the layers between product people and customers. And they've fired all the middle management, they've replaced it with software, they've done amazing stuff, and that's why it's called the startup factory. Now, if a company doing hardware that has 40,000 people working for them can do this, so can you. There's zero excuse for this, that we can't do it. We can pretend that we can't do it, but they are operating in a much, much more complex, more bureaucratic, more difficult environment than software is. And they're working with much larger timescales, and they can still do this stuff. So in terms of kind of working with software, in particular, there's lots of parallels to this. And one of the really interesting parallels I found was from Eventbrite, the kind of big ticketing platform and event management platform. Rachel Newman, who was, I think, the head of product there, had this wonderful presentation where she talked about how they realized that in their support system, they have so much data about what the customers experience and what kind of pain customers experience, but they're completely ignoring it. Nobody's using that for product management. Nobody's using that for inspiring new ideas. It's there as a bug. It gets fixed like a bug. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it gets ignored. And what they started doing is systematically putting product managers in the loop with these things. So they can actually figure out these things, get good product signals, ship them back and improve the product. And that's kind of what we need to do. So I build my own products and I'm, both the main product person and the main support person. So for me, it's easy to close that loop. And kind of occasionally some really, really crazy things happen. For example, we started optimizing the login screens to get people to go through the registration faster. And then we removed everything apart from the bare minimum that was the email. We thought people just enter the email, we'll kind of, everything else, we'll deal with that later. Then we started logging what happens. And these are some of the logs we got. So you can see gamil.com, you can see gmali.com, you can see emali.com, gmal.com, gimal.com. When you have enough users, there's thousands and thousands of these things happening every day. Now, the core question is, do we want to take money from these people or not? And if the answer is yes, then we need to figure out how to get them to fucking register. Because if somebody's not clever enough to enter their own email, we need to help them. So the thing here is something that the best name I have for this is the stupidity sandwich. In a situation like this, there's like two sides of this sandwich where it's perfectly clear what needs to happen, and one side that's stupid inside. So in this situation, basically, the customer knows what they want to do. They're trying to register. You know what they're trying to do. They're trying to register. But the product is too stupid to realize that. The product is too stupid to understand that somebody typing gmali.com probably wanted to do gmail.com. You know that, I know that from that picture, no problem at all. And in support systems, we have thousands and thousands of things like this that we're completely ignoring. Or most companies are completely ignoring. I'm not doing that anymore. We've changed the front end to basically say we captured like 100 different variants of Gmail that people type in. If you type in that, it changes it to Gmail, just kind of proceeds with the registration. I'll take their money. So the thing is kind of here, we don't think about the stupidity sandwich like this in our industry. It's really, really important. In our industry, we think about this as the user is too stupid to use our software. Who be honest, who had a thought like that? The user is too stupid. And that's wrong. I mean, that's wrong from many, many different perspectives. But sometimes the user is actually too stupid. So this is kind of my life today, and most remaining days I get emails like this from people all around the world in weird languages I can't read. At this point, I don't even need to read this thing because I get hundreds of these when we mess something up, and they pretty much all mean the same thing. So this is a guy complaining that he tried to do text-to-speech on the website, and he tried it with these two voices, and it didn't work. Now, there's a couple of really interesting facts about this email. The first is that these voices do not exist on my website. There's no such thing as these voices. The second, more interesting thing is that this page does not exist. So this person typed in something that absolutely does not exist, trying to do something that doesn't exist, and then sent a support email complaining that it doesn't work. Well, of course. And what he got was a 404 page saying, you're wrong. This is wrong. Everything is wrong about this. But basically, the key question again is, do we want to take these people's money? And because it's my product, my money, yes, absolutely. So, more than anything, I want to stop hundreds of people sending me emails like this. So this was hallucinated by ChatGPT. ChatGPT at some point started offering our product to people, completely hallucinating the URLs and hallucinating what the product does, sending them to the product. But this is customer acquisition. I've gotten a customer. It's not the customer I expected to get, or in a way I wanted to get him, but I got a customer. I'll take his money. So basically what we did is we changed the 404 page to say, oh, create a new audio. It's not saying you're wrong, this page doesn't exist. It's saying, hey, you are here in an unexpected way. Just click here to go through the text-to-speech page. Fix the problem with all these emails, increase revenue. So, and we can think about this, well, this is insane, it's an edge case, it's a stupidity thing, nobody's going to do this, but it's not true. There's lots and lots of data to show that these things happen all the time, we're just ignoring them. Scott Alexander wrote this wonderful, wonderful blog post called Revenge of the Lizard Man, where he talked about how in kind of public policy polling in the US, there was this kind of public policy research thing. They concluded that about 4% of the people do things that are completely unexplainable. They were filling in a survey where they were entering American as a gender, or they were putting in Martian as a nationality, and things like that. So, and he said it's like every survey you do, there's about 4% of these things. And he called it the lizard man constant because of kind of some belief that lizard men run the United States or something like that. And I love this thing because, of course, it's a joke rule, but it's something that, gives us perspective to say, well, this is not a 0.0001 people. It's a significant percentage of people doing stupid things in our system at the moment. And maybe we can help them. Scott talks about how some of these people basically don't understand the answer. Some of these people understand the answer, but their fingers are too thick, they're typing on a small phone. Some of these people started answering one question, got distracted, went back to the survey, answered a totally different question. Some of these people are malicious. They're just, doing bad things to see what's going to happen. And there's a million reasons why. But there's a significant percentage of these people kind of figuring this thing out. Now, of course, we have kind of the user is too stupid to use a product. Be honest, how many of you have ever thought the user is too smart to use a product? That's a totally different problem, but very, very related. So we had this case where I was working with a UK gambling company, and we integrated with a poker network that was American. You play poker in dollars, one chip is 1 cent. The UK customers had their account in pounds, and they had this thing where basically we built a screen. You have your account in pounds, you need to buy dollar chips, but they're actually cents. So you buy some chips, you sell chips and things like that. And somebody figured this thing out where the exchange rate at this point was 0.54 pounds per dollar. And basically, they took in one chip, sold it into pounds, which was 0054, ended up being 1 penny. Took that 1 penny back, converted it into this, and got 2 cents back, 2 chips. And this is, my friends, is how computers cause inflation. So this person was too smart for us. They figured out that chips were dollar cents. They figured out they can do kind of Forex better than we can. And when this thing happened, the next day, he took out 20,000 pounds from his account because he wrote a bot that did this thing all the time. And then, customers complained that the developers messed up. The developers complained that testers didn't test. Testers complained that the spec was wrong, and everybody was blaming everybody else. Absolutely everybody was blaming everybody else, and basically it was up to me at this point to decide if this was a bug or a feature. Because the spec said we should do rounded to 2 decimals. It explained how to do that. Everybody was looking at me, and I said, well, this is a bug. I mean, it's obviously a bug. And I logged it as a bug. And then 10 minutes later, I had a senior stakeholder coming to me and saying, well, you put this as a bug. Why? And I explained the whole situation. I said, no. You're thinking about this thing the wrong way. He says, you're thinking about this that kind of bugs are bad, features are good. And because something bad happened, we have a bug. It's the only difference between a feature and a bug is who pays for it. If it's a bug, we pay for fixing it. If it's a feature, then there's another feature request coming to change it, the customers pay. So from now on, everything is a feature. And I mean, we can argue about that, but this really got me to think more wider about what is a bug. Who declares something being a bug or not? And we had a couple of really weird cases. For a while, I used to work on a collaboration tool for mind mapping. And this was before COVID, before work from home, before kind of any of that stuff. We had this really, really weird bug report that our application does not work when started on a fridge. Like, of course it doesn't work when started on a fridge. How would you even run it on a fridge? I don't understand. Like, it's designed for laptops and keyboards and I said, no, and I said, well, let's talk to the person. I want to understand what's going on. It was such a bizarre bug report that I needed to understand how did you get it on a fridge? And it turns out this user was a busy mother, and she had 2 kids. So in the morning, she would not come to work yet to collaborate with her colleagues when they were doing planning. And they were using our tool to do kind of their iteration planning. And they were using it to kind of coordinate the plan and break it down and things like that. And she was like preparing breakfast for her children, participating in the meeting. And having a laptop in the kitchen is bad because children can spill orange juice or milk on it. Having a phone isn't good because you can't really see it from a distance. She's running around. But she had this brand new Samsung fridge that had a massive Android screen on it. It's like she can see the screen from the rest of the kitchen. Why not? She tried loading it. There was a browser. It loaded. Of course, it didn't work. But we started thinking about this. Well, I imagined all sorts of weird shit going on there, where we need to deal with fruit, or we need to kind of deal with temperature or things like that. But at the end, what we needed to do was actually allow her to observe a meeting. Not necessarily participate directly, because you don't have a keyboard, you don't have a mouse. This thing just doesn't, it's not good for the primary use case, but we never thought about this case of people just participating in a meeting. And we built it so that people can participate without a keyboard, without a mouse, with a toolbar, maybe touch, not 100%, but enough. And then when COVID came and work from home came, the kind of product tool increased like mad. So I think one of the things that really got me to think about this differently is, instead of talking about good or bad as bugs or features, we need to think about expected or unexpected. It was unexpected for me that somebody's going to do arbitrage on Forex because I didn't know that. Now I do, so I expect it all the time. It was unexpected for me that somebody will try to load my app on a fridge. Or that somebody can't type their email, or a million other things. But then we have kind of this thing where, if we're talking about expected, then the question is expected by whom? So I think there's roughly kind of 4 categories there. One is whether kind of users expect it to work like that, and the other is whether the makers expect it to work like that. And we're all makers, developers, testers, product people, whoever is involved in getting the product out, stakeholders, that's the kind of vertical. And there's basically a couple of categories here. This one is passed all the acceptance tests, everybody likes it. This one is clearly a bug, so that's okay. And this is kind of the categorization that most people have. Now, what I'm going to encourage you to think about is this diagonal here, because that diagonal here is a lot more important for your work. What happens when we expect something to work like that, but the users don't? And what happens where we don't expect it and the users do? And kind of Kat Holmes, who worked for Microsoft on UX research, calls this area a mismatch. That's a mismatch between users' abilities, capabilities, environment, and the application. Maybe the sunlight is too strong. Maybe the screen is too small. Maybe they are physically impaired, or in case of people who don't know how to enter their email, mentally impaired. But it's a mismatch. And the other thing here is basically an exploit. Somebody figured out how to use your software for something that you didn't want to. And understanding these two things is crucially important for product management, because understanding these two things gives you lots of good product signals. The key thing I want to make, the key argument I want to make today is that finding a mismatch or finding an exploit is basically discovering a hidden product opportunity. There was a lovely story in Jessica Livingstone's book called Founders at Work, and it's about a guy called Max Levchin. Max Levchin was an incredibly smart guy who in mid-90s developed some really, really powerful cryptography algorithms that could run on low-power devices. And he was happy about that. Really, really efficient cryptography. And then he realized that he built something where it was a solution in search of a problem. Like, what do we do with this now? I mean, it's really efficient cryptography, so it doesn't spend as much energy as kind of the other cryptographic algorithms. So in theory, you can run it on devices that don't have that much energy. Late 90s, no mobile phones, that was like Palm Pilot was the thing. As a precursor to all the mobile phones we have today. Said, okay, we can do cryptography on a Palm Pilot. Said, what do you want to encrypt on a Palm Pilot? I mean, and that was the thing. So they said, well, money is kind of important. So people might want to encrypt money. And came up with this idea where you will have your money encrypted on a Palm Pilot. Another person is going to have money encrypted on their Palm Pilot. And then you bump the two Palm Pilots together and money jumps from one Palm Pilot to another. It was like an incredibly good demo. It was fun. They built it. And it was so difficult to test because you needed to have two people actually banging things together, that they built software simulators for it. And this is late 90s, so one of the easiest way to start up a software simulator was to build a website. So they built this website where they could basically bump websites together. And about a year later, they realized that 12,000 people are using their Palm Pilot app. 1.5 million people are using the website, although the website was a testing thing that was not really intended to be used publicly. And then the product manager fought it. They tried to kind of shut it down. They tried to go, they threatened to sue people who are offering to take money from their website on third-party sites and things like that. And then somebody had enough smarts to say, wait a minute, the Palm Pilot app is not a product, the website is the product. So they shut down the Palm Pilot app, and the website is now PayPal. So everybody's doing this thing, but people spend months and months and months fighting the signals when they hear them. because we are so tied into our KPIs. We are tied into getting the app to work. We're tied into getting this usage instead of that. And then when something else happens, we want to do, when people wash potatoes in your machine, you're like, oh, stop washing potatoes, instead of, hey, here's a machine for potatoes. One of the really interesting things is at this point, you already have a customer. Like the most difficult part of getting the product successful is to get people to use the product. Customer acquisition, marketing, that's kind of totally beyond most people in this room. Once the customer is interacting with the product, that's where we take over. That's where we can do good stuff. So Amy Gallo had this wonderful article in Harvard Business Review a few years ago where she said that basically improving customer retention by 5% has total disproportionate effects on profitability, up to 95%. So we can, increase product success by bringing lots of new people in, or we can keep the people that we already get in weird ways as well, and get them to kind of use the stuff. So this is where lizard optimization comes in. And I work still on a product that started as a video conversion tool using text-to-speech, where you would upload your PowerPoint slides, it would read speaker notes to create a nice video. And I kind of started getting weird usages and bug reports, started getting a bug report from one user how he tried to configure something for audio, it didn't work, downloaded his video, it was completely blank. And I was like, oh, we're charging people for blank videos, we have a problem somewhere. There was audio there, but like no visuals. And I thought, well, maybe we have a bug in the pipeline for converting PowerPoints. So I looked at that. I spent time investigating it. Nope, everything was fine. I looked at his PowerPoint in the official Microsoft PowerPoint application. It was completely blank. I said, well, this person's using something weird. And I asked him, like, how did you create this PowerPoint? Is it like, some archaic version of OpenOffice for Linux or something like that? He said, no, Microsoft Office Online. It's like, fuck. I said, well, when you open this PowerPoint in your office, what's on the first slide? I said, it's completely blank. He's like, so why are you paying us to make blank videos? I said, but this whole text-to-speech thing that we've done was so well optimized that he could justify creating a blank PowerPoint just to use the text-to-speech features, waiting to get a video out, loading it into a video editor tool, taking the audio track out just to use an audio track for some radio ads. It's like, this is insane. We're putting obstacles in front of this person. And then I said, well, from an operational perspective, this also costs us, because creating videos is a lot more expensive than creating audio. So I created this really stupid screen where people can upload a Word document or just copy and paste text and get an audio out. A couple of months later, these were the stats. There were kind of 264 video conversions in this period on the dashboard, and 124,000 audio conversions. 500 times more. People wanted this, they didn't want this. I wanted this, I really wanted to build this stuff, but people wanted this. So you can totally refocus the product to do that. And this is kind of, I think, this signal that people are using a product in a way we didn't expect is really, really important. So there's a couple of steps to this. It's not just kind of watching the signal. One, like if you look at the steps, the first step is to kind of figure out how people are misusing your product or using your product in an unexpected way. And we need to be able to listen to that. There's a lot of support data. There's a lot of kind of forums, bug tickets and things like that, but we can build a product to support this as well. For example, with this kind of text-to-speech thing, here's the screen, the wonderful screen. There's an upload file button there. You click the upload file button, you upload the file. Word, PDF, whatever we can do, we do. If you upload something that we don't support, you get a nice error message saying, hey, you upload screenshot.png. I mean, I can't read PNGs, sorry. This is where most applications stop. Our application also logs a signal about this to the database, so we know what people are uploading. So we have extensive logs, like I get still hundreds uploads per day uploading APK files. APK files are Android packages. Somebody's trying to convert an Android application into speech. Hundreds of times per day, different users. How, why? No idea. completely non-actionable. I don't know what to do about this. But occasionally we get some interesting stuff. For example, we had 20, 30 people per day uploading SRT files. SRT files are subtitle files for videos. And I said, well, this is text, so we'll just let it run. We can let these people, why not? And then people started complaining that it's reading out the timestamps. And I said, well, you uploaded a file that has timestamps and text. It's reading out the timestamps, of course. What did you expect to happen? And he said, well, I expected it to synchronize the sound with the timestamps. I said, ooh, interesting. And there was kind of an interesting technical problem because you can't just speed up a voice. It gets distorted pitch and things like that. So I spent about 3 hours solving this problem. It sounded like a fun problem to solve. If you look at the usage of this, is 20 files per day, like 0.000 something percentage. It was just a fun problem to solve. A month later, one of the biggest ERP companies in the world figured out that they can produce their videos in multiple languages just by kind of converting the subtitles they already have and started converting hundreds of thousands of videos on our platform. This was the most profitable 3 hours in my life, spending time on this. And it was a fun problem to solve. And it's something where if I looked at the actual product usage, actual percentages, estimated impact, well, nobody would ever pick this up. But it was like weird, decided to solve it, why not? Turned out to be amazing. So kind of the problem with this is once you start collecting this data, there's just so much data that it's really, really difficult to figure out the signal from the noise. There's millions of people misusing the product in millions of interesting ways. How do we kind of pick something up? So this is where kind of step number 2 is really kind of doing some good product management, doing analysis and figuring out what's worth focusing on. And worth focusing on might be, hey, this is a fun problem to solve. Or it might be, hey, you know, we have this massive opportunity to do with this stuff now. So, for example, in the text-to-speech system, once people started uploading this thing, we started logging errors when something can't be converted. When the voice throws an error or something like that. And this was the log, basically. So we have Charles reading Hindi, RoboVoice reading Hindi. These are English voices. We have Preeti, an English Indian voice, only trained for English reading. I know that this is Bengali now. Well, this is kind of, you know, I've learned too much about these things. We have Charles, that's kind of an English voice reading what looks like Russian. So lots and lots of problems where people have a mismatch between what they expected the product to do, like a voice that can only read English, and these things. And so this is where kind of I think it's really, really important to go back to the previous presentation and getting people to experience value quickly. So Kathy Sierra, in her book Badass, you should absolutely read that, talks about something called the suck zone, where when people start interacting with your product, first they feel hatred because it's a new thing. They feel that they cannot be productive with it. And at some point, if you get them over the hurdle to do basics, they keep using your product. And she said most users kind of drop off here. And her timing for this was half an hour. The product-led growth community recently did some analytics and they said you have about 30 seconds for this. We got it down to about 5 seconds. I'm really happy about that. So get people to escape the suck zone as soon as possible. Get them to do something productive so they feel value, and then they will spend more time with your product. So this is basically step number 3, is remove obstacles that the product is putting in front of people to complete the good tasks. So with the text-to-speech thing, we basically figured out, well, you know, we can't solve it for everybody, but most of the problems we're getting here is Hindi or Bengali or something that you can discover that by Unicode blocks. So on the front end, this was the first implementation. If you added something that looks like Bengali or Hindi, but you selected an Irish voice, it just says, hey, this looks like this. Click here to proceed. And this is what the product-led growth community calls bumpers. You have kind of people are going in a direction, you put bumpers on the road to keep them going where they need to go, to finish what they need to finish. So this is where kind of an interesting thing started happening, where we were converting about 100,000 videos per day, 100,000 audio files per day, and then when we released this and fixed it properly, this thing happened, which is kind of the usage doubled in a day. And this was really, really interesting, primarily because of Twyman's law. Twyman's law says that if you're doing some metrics and you find a figure that's interesting, it's usually wrong. And we said, well, what's wrong here? And we need to kind of figure out what's wrong, because it's impossible that the usage doubled in a day. And I kind of quite like to use the 5 stages of growth method from Lean Analytics, where you can look at kind of metrics from 5 different areas and use one as a kind of growth target, use the others as a constraint. So we want to grow, we want to increase stickiness, but we don't want to damage revenue or operation costs too much. And our operation costs were jumping through the roof. Our revenue was the same. We were getting stickiness, but we were losing money. And then we tried to kind of figure out what's wrong. And one of the things that was wrong was basically everybody was from India. They were not converting. So I said, well, maybe we can't process money. Maybe we can't kind of take these customers now. We've increased usage for this too much. So we kind of blocked India as a, like, let's not ruin the company. Let's figure it out later. And once we blocked India, this thing happened. People from Poland started converting Hindi language audio like mad. People from Malta all of a sudden started converting Hindi language audio. People from Finland, people from Canada, and we realized these people are using VPNs. So I think, you know, there's a VPN provider here as a sponsor of this conference. So maybe you got some money out of this. And our next kind of thing was just like block VPNs. So we had like a very, very stupid error message, like a basic HTML page that says, hey, it's fine, you can use a VPN, but not for this website. This kind of removed the problem immediately. So that was the problem. But then we kind of dropped a lot of engagement as well, which is not that good. So the final step in this is to kind of look for measure the effects and look for unexpected impacts. And we started kind of getting lots of unexpected impacts here. I started getting hundreds and hundreds of emails per day. Most of them were like this, which is kind of, he's harassed by the policeman or military who monitor his internet traffic, and that's why he needs to use a VPN. And he's not a hacker or a spam or a robot. I think that's exactly what a spam or a robot would say. So anyway, so hundreds and hundreds of emails like this. I got an email from an insurance company in India that said that their product, our product is critical for their business. They've been using it for 3 years and they can't access it anymore. I said, well, what's your account? He said, oh, we don't have an account. We're using it for free. So, well, if it's critical for your business, maybe you should have thought about paying for it. And then kind of I was getting about 20 emails per day that look like this, where it's coming from a Outlook autoresponder, anonymous email. So not autoresponder, anonymous email, you cannot respond to this. If you try replying to this, it bounces. So, and it's always like, please restore my access, no body, just subject, sent from mail for Windows. Same email coming from different addresses. And then about a week later, I got an email like this from Gmail. And I said, okay, now I can reply. And I said, well, we've blocked VPNs because of, you know, this and this, sorry. And the person said, that's fine, but I want you to return my money then. And it turns out he was one of our biggest customers. He was using a VPN because he lives in a country where he doesn't want kind of people to know what he's doing. And I realized, well, this is kind of a totally unexpected effect. I didn't want to lose this customer. So Christopher Alexander in his patterns book talks about how when you introduce a solution into a context, you change the context. Something else happens. We need to figure out what that something else is. And Kathy Sierra says that at this point, we can solve the problem for this specific person. I can whitelist his IP address. But that's wrong. What we should do is we should kind of figure out a solution for this case that expands to many other cases. That's how we win with the product. So don't solve a problem for one person, solve it for a whole class of people. And this is kind of what we did. Basically, if you're over a VPN, it says, oh, you know, if you want to pay us, that's perfectly fine. Click here to pay. If you're a commercial user, you don't even see the screen. It works just, but if you're a free user, pay. you know. So kind of this screen brought a 20% increase in revenue by the end of that month, which was, and that's kind of pretty much it. You will kind of, again, even with all these solutions, never satisfy everybody. So, you know, I got an email like this at the end, which I keep to show in presentations. Not much actionable advice here, but, you know, you should look at your support emails occasionally. So to finish this thing off, I've already run over time. There's like 4 key steps to this. One is to kind of get a lizard alert to figure out, hey, somebody's doing something unexpected with our system. The other is to kind of really figure out whether it's a signal you want to act on or not. Is that the behavior you want to change at this point? Is that the most important thing you can do? Then kind of try to figure out how to rescue these people. They got stuck somewhere. We need a bumper to kind of return them back. We need to, you know, put out the fire. And then when we do that, they're going to get crazy ideas again, and we need to double check that we're solving the problem in the right way. So kind of to finish this thing off, again, there is a polished version of the book now. If you can download it from this URL. And thank you very much. I hope this tickled your imagination at least a bit. And now we have this panel debate, I think.
Before that.